All right, I'm live at the Red House with my friend Amanda. Thank you for coming over to be on the podcast.
Okay, thanks for having me.
All right, so we've been friends for a couple years.
Yeah, I was thinking how long we've been friends. It's actually I think 6 years. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I guess it's been a while.
Yeah, we had a whole 2-year pandemic.
So it feels...
That makes it feel different, but yeah, 6 years. You've had dinner with my mom even.
Yep.
That was fun.
Yeah. You said last time I hung out with you, you said something that I think informs why I wanted to podcast with you, because we started out in one place, I think, at the same time as one another, with a set of beliefs, and we've been able to kind of watch and track and argue about stuff over the years.
Yep. We both changed our minds a lot, which is good. That's cool. I like that. I'm glad.
Yeah. So I wonder if I have some things that I just straight up want to ask you your opinion about, but maybe what we could start with is you could lay down a foundation of the beliefs that maybe you were exposed to or came up with, and then sort of what your education was in and all that, just the foundation of how you see the world.
Growing up, I was raised in a church in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, which was really beautiful. It was a beautiful place. It was a cool little church. It was a Methodist church, and they were not too I don't know. I felt like they truly weren't very judgmental. They were these beach hippie people, kind of. And Methodist church is not as rigid about rules. It's a lot more laid back. We didn't even know what Methodist meant. Didn't care. Nobody cared. We just wanted to go where you do the church thing. So mainly it was about just singing. I was Mary in the play. I have one of my childhood memories. I had a little veil. And it was fun. It was fine. It was good. And then I started asking questions about it when I was still young enough to be living there. So that was 9th grade or earlier. At some point in the Publix parking lot when it was raining, I asked my dad, why are we Christian? I guess I learned about names of other religions by school or something. I don't know. It wasn't like there was the internet and you could just Google things on your phone real quick. So something exposed me to it. I guess maybe must have been school probably, which is good. I'm glad I got exposed to it. I just started asking why. And when I was a kid, I think I did believe it. I think I had a belief in a higher being, and I think I still do. It's just changed. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I have gone to every extreme. I've been as angry as you were of an atheist. Mm-hmm. That's okay. People need to do that. I get that. It makes me really mad. Sometimes the way people can use religion as a tool to manipulate people. Clearly that's what it is. Come on. It's it's not I mean, not always. I'm not saying it's always that. I just gave you an example from my childhood where church, I think, and religion was really great for me. I was I liked Sunday school. It was fun. And I went from being seriously angry atheist.
Yeah.
Philosophy, just way too much into it. I wasn't it was good. I needed to do that. That's what I felt I needed to do at that time, and that's what I did. So that's fine. And then I decided, well, I'm done with this for now. I'm going to slowly become really Catholic, but never I maintain. And you can go back and look way back in our text, I promise you. I've never done it because I'm this would be way too crazy. Because that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I swear, though, I always said with our arguing came down to one major question, which was, is it possible that you're wrong that about this? And my answer, I maintain, was always yes. Of course. And yes, it's possible. Yes, of course. Now that I think is the difference between the way I was Catholic and the way a lot of other people are Catholic. They cannot even say it. And once I felt maybe it would help if you put it when I was in this argument with a person, like, can you hold the belief? You don't have to assent to the belief and say it's not. Like, it's like you can have these two things simultaneous beliefs. 1, yes, it's possible. 2, I believe it's actually true, though.
Yeah, spot on. I think that is why I wanted to talk about this subject, because I remember it the same way. Like I remember too that you did admit like it was
Good, because one time I swear you argued with me about it, but
Well,
that's okay.
We argued a lot. Like I remember being outside of Camino, and people like we were outside at the picnic tables, and people were actually looking back over at us because we were arguing so much about religious views, like
Really?
loudly. Yeah,
I don't remember that.
yeah, it was funny. But yeah, we got really. You were my intense like debate partner for years.
Yeah.
But I wanted to like highlight that because I'm fascinated by what I've watched because of that period, because of other time periods where we've talked about ideas. You seem to me like different than some people. You seem to me like you really wrestle with ideas and beliefs and stuff in a really hands-on way, and you will like entertain them as deeply as you can until for some reason it like doesn't do something or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I will get really,
What is that like?
It's hard to say because I feel like it's not an option for me to do it or not. So,
Like it's just your nature?
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, I guess if we're talking about beliefs, so, I mean, the ones I like to talk about are what is freedom? What is even knowledge? How do we define, like, what are your beliefs about these things? What is freedom? What is knowledge? How do we know things? In what ways can we know things? In what ways can we even hold a belief? There's so many different ways to talk about beliefs. So, most of the time, though, I feel like I always leave room for there to be change. I'm trying to think of a belief that the only belief I ever come back to is just weird, like dark belief about like, and it's really specific. And I can be like, that's the one thing I think I would never question. And it's just like murdering innocent humans always seems bad. I feel like, okay, that's a belief maybe I'm sure about. I am sure about, of course.
Yeah.
Why? That's the only example that's the example my mind always goes to, is to try to figure out that, is there any beliefs I don't question? I'll try to go to something like that and investigate it. So that's kind of what it's like. If you get really into something, you also get really into investigating it. Like, why believe this thing? I mean, asking more and more questions until you get to an unanswerable question. And it's like, okay, well, keep going now. I guess.
I mean, you probably realize I'm going to ask some of this like for kind of like a devil's advocate kind of way, but because it's not like I don't understand that curiosity, but you know, there are some people in the world that it's a lot more simple than that. It's a lot more like you find a model that works, that like brings about a bearable life, and you just do that. What do you think it is for you that simplicity doesn't speak to you? Like you need to keep going.
What? Okay. I don't equate changing my ideas often with like, okay. What do you mean by simple?
You know, like someone who, I don't know, like what I observe from maybe if we think of like fundamentalist Christians sometimes, it's not like matters of theology or philosophy or whatever aren't interesting period to them, but it's more like what is the good in challenging ideas related to, say, Christianity? If my life is functioning, I'm happy with what I believe, and like I sleep okay at night. You know, they find, like, I think a lot of, not just Christianity, but a lot of people who settle into a belief system of that sort, they kind of do it and it brings them some sort of peace. And it sounds like for you, you're more personally invested in sort of like the question aspect of it and taking that as far as it can go.
Yeah. But what does that have to do with simplicity?
It seems, I guess...
Like it's not simple? Like that's a not simple thing to do?
Yeah, I think like, I guess I would say, well, questioning things to the degree that you do and the degree that a lot of people do, questioning those belief systems to the point where you can't even always hold them or whatever. Sometimes you like lose the belief system.
Yeah.
Seems like it would be simpler for you, easier for you if you were just like, fuck it, I'll just have a belief system and not question it. But that's not your nature.
Yeah, it's not. I literally couldn't do it.
Obviously, you don't know where every part of your nature and your brain and everything comes from, but...
Why is it like that? My dad's is like that. So is my sister's.
So that is a part of...
My family a little bit. My dad's the one who said, I don't know, when I asked him, why are we Christian? Why do you believe in this God and not a different God? He would say, I don't know. Basically, he would say, there's not a good answer. He would say something that it means, in other words, it's not a good answer. I don't have a good answer. There's no good answer.
I guess I'll ask you this, since you were talking about what are beliefs and stuff. Maybe we'll start there. Like,
Yeah.
what can you tell me about what beliefs actually are? Because I have some opinions that may be different from you on that.
Okay. What are beliefs? That's a really hard. Okay. So I would say it's an idea that you hold as true. I think it needs to be something you think is at least possibly true, because that's what beliefs are for me. That's what they are for me. It's something I think is possibly true about the world, life, the way humans live, the way we can know things. It's about any of those things. So, yeah, a set of ideas about how to interpret the world around you that you think is possibly true.
Mm-hmm.
What's your definition of belief?
I don't know if I have a pure definition or a clean definition, but I think usually I think I would ordinarily probably agree to that definition. But what I think is interesting is how much belief seems to be related to behavior. And lately I've been really bothered by how much belief comes with like a whole pattern of thoughts instead of just one.
Wait, what do you mean about behavior? Because I feel like you just changed the subject really quick after you said that.
When I say behavior, I suppose what I'm sort of starting to get to is like identity and the way that you express your identity through behavior. And so, like, think of it this way. If you think that, like, if you say that you believe that conservatism has some relationship with what's the best way to organize society or something, maybe you're more likely to buy a hat that says "Make America Great Again." You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So belief isn't just something like an opinion in your head, I guess. It also seems to guide your life in a way.
Belief it's also that, but you don't have to have that. Like, what I said is more a fundamental definition. I think that you're just building upon the definition, but you don't have to have those things to hold a belief. Like, I hold beliefs about things that don't. Maybe you do have to have those things. Maybe you do have to act. It does have to. You're saying it has to influence your behavior in order for it to be a belief.
I think
that's like a big leap that I don't know. Would have to think more about that before.
Well, it just seems that way in a way.
It's
like,
possible.
When you were a Catholic, you know, and you think of a quintessential Catholic. Is that reflected in their actions, the way that they live their life?
What does a quintessential Catholic mean?
I wouldn't know, but
So what does the word quintessential mean?
Let's just say stereotypical, or let's say general.
Generalized? Like if I were to generalize
a
Catholic, that's supposed to be ideal?
Yeah.
according to who? According to me or according to
I would say not according to you.
the priest?
Yeah, let's say
the men
according to the
of the
majority
church.
of Catholics.
I guess you hold human life very high level of respect. That's one thing I like. They hold the dignity of the human life very high, and I agree, because I agree human life is special, and we have so much potential to feel and experience things on this interesting level. I'm not going to say that the animals don't have anything like it, because probably they do. Animals are so cool. I don't know. But what are we talking about? I forgot. Sorry.
Well, we were talking about what beliefs are, and I think it's one thing to say that they are supposed to be basically a way of expressing what you think is true, but I don't really think that's what they are. I think it's more tribal than that. I think it's more behavioral than that. I think it's more it's more of a way of like forming an identity in a lot of ways.
I think it can be,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. Like, I feel like I'm an example of a person who holds beliefs without changing their life too much, because most of the beliefs I ever think that I'm subscribing to, I still hold these constants. Like, I always want the humans to be happy. That's always my goal. It's like human flourishing, people living good lives. And that's what I try. I try to hold beliefs that make that come true for people. The best. Like, that stays constant, even though I can change my mind about the labels that I'm giving that. I mean, leftist and super conservative people and super religious and atheists, they're all want. I truly believe most of them want the same thing, which is for human beings to flourish.
Yeah.
They want their fellow man and women to flourish. That's it.
Speaking of fellow men and women, you're actually my first female guest solo. I did have one that was here with her husband, but you're the first one, not by design. I've tried to have others, but
That's cool.
yeah, that's something kind of fun, I guess. Given that was one of my early criticisms for the show.
Oh, who gave you that criticism?
Just somebody passively said like something about it, which it
Like,
was,
hey, why? What's going on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you have an answer?
it was just. I mean, I have two. No, I have three female guests that I've like tried to have here already multiple times, and it hasn't worked out yet. So, anywho, what are your beliefs now? Like, what are you fucking with right now?
I don't feel any particular religion. I never have, like, my whole life. And so I feel passive about that, and I'm fine that Spencer, my husband, likes to pray with my son and like teach him the sign of the cross. And I said, as long as you don't teach him anything that goes against that core belief that I mentioned earlier, that basically anything that goes against human flourishing in the way that I see it. I mean, maybe I could be wrong about the way that I see it. I don't think I am, though. So, and that's fine. You can be Catholic and you can do that. There are a lot of very, let's say, well-meaning Catholics that truly, I've met them. I feel like I don't know if I've had deep enough conversations with them other than Spencer about their beliefs. I've seen some behavior and how should I put it, opinions that I do feel are destructive from them, for sure. Like, harmful.
Anything you want to specify?
Probably they're teaching about homosexuality being a sin and like I don't know, do they call it like an abomination or something like that? I'm actually not good about remembering Bible stuff.
Yes,
But
they do, and that is.
I think that's a disgusting, insane like, it's fine that it's in the Bible. There's a lot of crazy shit in the Bible. There's a lot of crazy shit in all the holy books. It's not about, I'm not like, oh, that's how you know the Bible is full of shit. Whatever. That's not the point.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's a pretty good example. It defines a part of the population that then can't live a prosperous life, which seems to go against
and
what
it's
you're...
like so silly. Like, give me a break. Like, get over it. Come on.
Yeah.
And then but it can break down. Sometimes I worry that it can break down the belief that it doesn't matter at all, gender, like, and that we should teach everyone gender does not exist. That's a really hard one. I have to think a lot about that one before I can assent to any of the beliefs that I have about it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's one we probably don't have to go into too much, but...
So yeah, in terms of religion, I said I'm very passive about it, but I am not okay. Like, I do hold beliefs that is not okay to use religion as a tool to manipulate people into beliefs that cause them to think that they need to separate, they need to hold themselves in some special regard that, like, I really don't like the belief that, like, only Christian or Catholic go to heaven. I think that is very damaging and silly and pretentious. I don't like pretentious beliefs about religion.
Do you currently believe in heaven?
But I don't think if you do have those beliefs, you have to be pretentious. Like, I mean, do you know what I'm saying? If you're, I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Sorry. What did you say about heaven?
I said, do you believe in heaven?
I believe it's possible. Yeah, I believe it's possible.
Okay. I hope it's possible, I think is what I'll, I don't know. It's fun to entertain.
I'm not going to say no. Like, I'm not going to say definitely there's no heaven. I mean, that's what we're talking about. What are you sure about? Definitely there's no heaven. What's even the point of having that belief?
Well, there's, I guess, an equal question of why you would have a belief that it's possible that heaven exists.
Well, because it is possible. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I should have said, is there a value on the other side in believing that heaven certainly exists?
Oh, believing it was, you're right.
Yeah.
Oof. Is there a value?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's no value in claiming to be certain that it doesn't, do you feel the same about people who claim certainty that it does?
I don't like claiming certainty that it does, yeah. I feel similar. That's
what I think I noticed most about all of your beliefs. Well, that's what you were talking about earlier, like this. But the way you just said that, I mean, I think I'm somebody who, I'm more reactive to people who claim more confidence than they should. Are you somebody who reacts more to people being more skeptical than they should be? As far as you can tell?
What do you mean reacts more?
Like, I can kind of, when people are super skeptical and cynical, I know how to relate to that. And even though I sometimes can think they're way wrong, it's like, it doesn't bother me as much as people who seem to, like, have a lot of confidence in a particular belief that I don't think warrants so much confidence.
That bothers me more. What you just,
Having more confidence?
Yeah. If you, react, is that what you mean by react to?
Yeah.
It bothers me more. It makes me feel anger almost, like, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like what I've been feeling especially about the political spectrum right now.
Yeah.
I don't know why I get angry, but I get, like, actually aggravated when people are, like, just spewing beliefs that I think do not deserve so much noise.
Like what?
I mean, I'm selective about how specific I get, and maybe I shouldn't be, but, like, I think I think the main theme is just, like, all institutions that you can think of any way that they could be corrupt or exclusionary or anything means that they're bad. and the way that that's expressed from like everything from the divide between men and women, the divide between left and right, the divide between citizens and police, like everything, every way that is like that we're told these days that like every institution we have, everything that's organized is corrupt and bad, is what I'd fuck with the least right now.
Is that wokeness?
I think so, yeah. Some people, I think, can get away with calling it progressivism. I think wokeness is like the furthest form of progressivism, the most ideologically possessive form of progressivism.
I don't know. It stresses me out, honestly. I do not like politics. I think they're interesting, but I think they're exhausting. I like to talk about like the foundations of our political beliefs, like less of the, I guess, more fundamental principles underlying how you would build a belief system. Like if we were going to build a utopia, we could do a thought experiment. I would like to talk about politics like that. Like what kind of policies would you have in your utopia? What kind of laws would you make? Would you have a police? Would you let the people police themselves? Because they will. If you don't hire some people, put some uniforms, the people will just form their own things. And like maybe that's better. I don't know. I don't know.
What do you, I mean, do you have ideas for your utopia?
No. I mean, I think I have like at least, like I said earlier, no murdering.
Yeah.
No murdering people and torturing people, like causing and then if you say causing suffering, now you have to have a lot of rules.
Yep.
Like what? So these are the types of things that we need to agree on these before we can even talk about what a Republican believes or a Democrat or what is the other options? Like a libertarian.
Yeah.
They don't like government. I don't say I don't like government. I don't think I like our government. Shit is crazy. It is weird. It does not make any sense.
I think I noticed in some conversations I was having recently, I don't talk about politics like some people do, where they're like, yeah, Trump did this, but Biden does this. That never is how I think about it. I think about it as like, what are people doing, And I don't know why that difference is there, but that's what I'm hearing that's what I'm hearing a little bit of in what you're saying. I understand not being interested in like what happens in Washington, but I think for me, what bothers me the most is when the way I see it, like political beliefs take people captive and like take over their whole way of seeing the world, and that they just embody it's almost like I swear to God, it's
too
like
sure, like you were saying. They just have too much certainty, like we were saying earlier. Like that's what bothers you the most. You'd rather people be skeptical of their own political belief system.
Well, the reason for that is because I want them to be free to be actually awake people and like interacting in the world. And I think that those people who look for that certainty, they're kind of like, it's like their person is going to sleep, and the thing that's driving them and the words they say and the things they do are the belief system that they claim to hold, which I think the belief system is kind of holding them. I think it's the other way around.
Yeah. It's become too it has too much power, but I think that like it got put there artificially. So I don't blame people for falling into that trap that they set for everyone.
How do you think it got put there artificially?
Well, because especially the media, like Kanye West, have you seen his Instagram? He's going crazy. He's a good example because he's not going crazy. He is, but he isn't. Is it bad to say people go crazy? Because sometimes, because I work in mental health, and sometimes I say it to my patients, and I feel like, is it okay to say people go crazy?
I sure as fuck think so.
I think it is, but anyway. Who was going crazy?
Kanye.
Yeah, okay. So the media, the Hollywood elite, the pop stars, the movie stars, they all advocate for liberal and leftist ideas of the world.
Yeah.
But so in that way, they're giving a lot of power to that belief system. And it's I think most people believe it in a superficial way that they don't even know. They don't do what we just did about the utopia. And they're not like, okay, first let's figure this out. Now we could talk about what policies we want to have and how are we going to run an economy? Excuse me, are you an economist? No.
Right.
No, most people are not economists. And if you don't have the very clear view, fundamental beliefs about how just the economy works, that's just one of them. I mean, insurance, healthcare, foreign affairs. There are countries building weapons in other parts of the world, big ones, and forming masses. What? Oh, that's not good. It's very stressful. So it's well, guess what? How are we going to make... So that's not even what you ask yourself is how do you make a utopia? Okay, that's great if we figure that out. But that doesn't mean it's going to function in this world that we live in now.
Yeah.
Because someone's going to come take your utopia over. Possibly, maybe. This is tricky. We need to stop thinking that's true. I don't think it has to be true.
I feel like everything you just laid out is a really good example of what we were talking about a little earlier. What the complexity that you just explained, I think, is a little closer to real life. That's real life is complex.
Yeah.
And it's weird to me that so many people
don't
prefer this low resolution kind of quick means to an end. That's red and blue. Okay, I'll sign up for the blue team and I'll just speak for the blue team.
No, I don't think that it's thoughtless. I think they do it with a lot of thought. I did it. I used to be very liberal. And I would say I still hold plenty of maybe more left-leaning beliefs. Mm-hmm. I do. But I don't think that if we elect a liberal Congress and a liberal president, things will change the way that they I guess I have less hope in this label and this. I don't know. It's yeah. I went from one extreme to the other. I was very liberal. You probably knew me when I was still more vocally liberal.
And probably when I met you, I would say that's
and
the vibe I got.
I think even with Biden, I was a little bit, and then I felt stupid afterwards because.
What do you mean?
I was vocal about being sure that Biden was going to be a better choice.
Oh.
I mean, oh God, let's not talk about Trump. I don't want to. It's very stressful.
Sounds fine. Yeah. I don't think it's thoughtless the way that people are. I think it's out of necessity, or not. Yeah. I don't think it's a true necessity, but I think it makes people plug into the world faster, and I think that's why it happens so much at a college level when people turn into super liberals.
What do you mean by plug into the world? Feel a part of the group?
Feel like they're a part of the big narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's what we see. It's what we've been taught for so long. Mm-hmm. So, but it's kind of boring and annoying. It's boring and annoying. So I think it would be great. People will stop doing it soon. I know they will. I mean, I can remember a time when it wasn't like that. I feel like maybe I was just younger. I was just too young. That's what it was. I was too young to really even start thinking about my political beliefs. I remember stealing who ran against George Bush? Al Gore?
George, yeah. You talking about the second George?
The president, the guy who was president. Wait, he was president, right? George Bush. When the towers went down.
Yeah, George W. Bush.
George W. Bush. Who ran against him?
Al Gore.
Al Gore.
And then John Kerry.
Yeah, so one of them, I don't know, somebody had a political sign, and it was for, I think it was either John Kerry or Al Gore, and my one of my family members taught us when we were kids to go run and steal that sign, because they are all pretty, I guess, right leaning people, with the exception of, well, actually all the cousins, all the younger generation are more left leaning.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, my grandparents, I don't know what, my grandma's beliefs, they're definitely they're just based in straight up tradition sometimes. Like, it's not even a matter of, I guess that's right leaning. The right leaning likes to think if something's a tradition, it's good.
Mm-hmm. This is a big pattern that it gets seen a lot. That it's like that I at least see in a lot of my friends. It's like you start out with conservative parents or parents who are more conservative than you become. Then you start to get your education. You go left. You go into that like it's a triumphant thing. And then as you gain more experience, you kind of integrate these things and become a more individuated person, I would say. I suppose. There are exceptions to that. There are people who stay in those belief systems forever, and all they are is like a chess piece for forever. But that was my path. That was the path of a lot of people that I've talked to. And it sounds like a little bit of you too. Like you went from being, around people like that to being in school and being exposed to more of the liberal stuff, and then
I was very liberal in Atlanta and very right wing in North Carolina. For undergrad, I went to a very liberal school, but in North Carolina, it was graduate school, so it was not. I didn't get to know those people honestly, and most of those people were not from North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't in that crowd. The most exposure to like the farthest right-leaning thing that I know is through Spencer's parents, his family. I mean, my parents, my mom, not as much. My dad, in some ways, he doesn't quite like to admit it, or maybe he just doesn't realize it, but he holds more left-leaning beliefs than he realizes. But he would he just, I feel like well, I don't want to speak for him, but I know for a fact he's felt very frustrated with the government before.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it's operating, both sides.
What do you think how do you define like the right and the left?
Yeah,
what do you
I
think
knew that
makes
was
them up?
coming. I was going to ask you that question. Well, we said tradition is very important for the right. I want to just stick to the more like fundamental things about it and not too much of like specific policies.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most important things that distinguish the two is that right-leaning people do tend to not trust the government to figure their shit out.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas left-leaning people have a lot of trust in the government, which to me is very ironic because they like to accuse people of being fascist. Mm-hmm. And fascism is what happens when people trust the government too much.
Yeah, let me throw this in. There's this weird thing that I observe over and over, and I don't know how to deal with it, but there's this contradictory nature in every belief. Exactly what you just said. I do think conservatism tends to own patriotism in this way, while also wanting small government.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then with the left, you've got all this fuck the government stuff, and
love the government. They'll
we
trust
want
the government.
Yeah, we want more government.
Yeah.
But also it's weird. All this anarchist belief stuff I think is coming from very liberal people. People that are tear the system down and stuff. It makes no fucking sense.
Well, no. I mean, yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense. You're right.
It was like that one time I wrote an essay that you reviewed for me, and you pointed out. I remember you saying, "This is an interesting thought," and it was something connected to this. It was like how in like people who are like atheistic liberals or whatever, people who are like, "There's no God and we must live perfectly." Like the atheistic liberal type seems to really put a lot of emphasis on virtue. Whereas the like super Christian conservative type seems to put a lot more emphasis on like live how you want, like live freely, which I also think is kind of a contradiction.
Wait. Well, virtue. That's a big word, so you
True.
have to talk more about that.
Yeah. I guess what I mean is like you think of your I'm thinking in really generic terms of identity groups that I can like generally think of in my head. But yeah, you know what I mean by like atheistic liberal type. Let's take Sam Harris for example. He's very like he's invested in trying to figure out the way people should be. And you would think, in my mind, that you would think that like a belief in God is really, and it has been traditionally related to beliefs about how people should be, how people should act and stuff.
Right.
So that's where the virtue thing plugs in. Whereas what we're seeing nowadays is like the people who claim to believe in God and stuff, they tend to also be the ones who want the least, like, I don't know. This sounds so general to say, but I'm just going to go with it anyway. It's like what you were kind of describing about the, I don't know, libertarian conservative side of things that are like hands off and small government. They seem to be more interested in maximizing people's autonomy than they are kind of like about instituting rules about behavior, except for a couple of examples that could come to mind, like things about gender or sexuality.
Virtue and rules about behavior.
Yeah, so virtue versus...
I would argue libertarians actually hold virtue in very high regard. It's just they don't apply it. It's just coming through differently, I think.
Yeah, I guess their virtue, the virtue they're focused on is that, well, it's that autonomy too, though. Like they're some of them Ron Paul types were like, fuck it, you should be able to die of drug use if you want to. That's your right. You're free. Whereas on, I would say the liberal side, it's, I think there's more of that. Drug use is a bad example because that does fall apart because conservatives traditionally have given more of a shit about that, and liberals are more accommodating to addiction and stuff.
Oh, wow. You just said a lot of different ideas. You just said a lot of things.
Yeah.
We could talk about any of them.
Yeah.
Listen, I think what you've learned is this: you need to have another episode, right?
What do you mean?
With me. I have to be your regular guest. I'll come on at least once a month.
Once a quarter?
Yeah, or once a quarter. A quarter could be good.
If I did
every solstice.
That'd be fun. If I did 2 or 3 shows a week, which is what I hope to do eventually, I would definitely have you on often.
I would love it. I love to talk.
Same as John Green. I'd love to get you and John Green in the same room.
It would be fun to talk with other people.
Yeah, he and I'm thinking about it'd be fun to do. Actually, you and I were talking about doing some debates, which I think would be fun to do and facilitate. So anyway, we didn't really get to a solid or conclusive place, but I guess to go back into the midst of where we were, I always thought that when I had beliefs that they were just like true. And then when I found out that they weren't true or whatever, like perfectly true, it kind of pissed me off. And I'm wondering do you resent at all the different things that you've believed along the way?
No, because I never, like I told you, one of my earliest memories was questioning my most fundamental belief, which was my belief about God.
Yeah.
So that just kept going.
So it doesn't bother you.
And I like that. I'm glad that happened. Because now, no, I don't. It's easy for me to change my mind. Mm-hmm. I'm truly a full-blooded Gemini.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's fun. I've been looking at everybody's it's fun because I know a lot of personalities because I have to look at people's birthdays. And my job, I see people and their birthday. But I see these people regularly, like once a week. I got it's not the same as a regular. It's very rare to see people that regularly in healthcare. Only a few specific things, I guess, you would see them that often. And get to know them so deeply and then get to also see their birthday. But I'm finding out that a lot of them are also into it, which is fun.
I don't know about this. I just like, I've obviously been exposed to this forever, the whole thing. And I don't know I don't know, but I don't know how to justify that belief. That's one of them that's like, to me, in the total category of like mythology.
Yeah.
But you seem to be kind of feeling like you're seeing reasons
I
to
see
entertain
patterns
it.
in it, like no doubt. It aligns very well. I mean, what throws me off is I'm a person who's very skeptical of everything, as we discussed. So, and my thoughts are getting ahead of themselves. Sorry. Basically, I question it so much, and I keep trying to make it not make sense, and it keeps making sense. Like every time you're maybe one of the signs that you may be the only person that I'm like, but I would be really interested to look at your moon sign and your rising sign, because those make a big difference too. And it wasn't until I learned about the 3 different ones and the ways they are divided. We talked about this a little bit, but they're divided by cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And then they're divided by earth, fire, water, and air. And you can make a grid like that. And they get categorized like that. And when and all of those things mean things. So fixed signs are what it sounds like: grounded, down to earth. I am pretty sure you're a fixed sign. Virgo, I think, is a fixed earth sign. But air signs, I'm an air sign, which so anybody who's an air sign is supposed to have the trait of adapting easily to change and being a little flighty, like just a little distracted. And then being mutable. So mutable means changing easily. So it's double rapid crazy to be a mutable air sign. It's like being a what would be a good example? Probably a cardinal fire sign, which is Leo, which is the Aries. Because the Aries is a fire sign. So fire signs are Aries, Leo, and I think Sagittarius. Yeah. And fire signs are what it sounds like. They're just kind of outgoing. Like Leo's very outgoing. Aries is very, what's the word? Excitable. Like one of my friends says they're young souls, so they get excited about things and they want to show everybody, and that happens to align well with a toddler. So it is funny for my kid to be labeled that.
Yeah.
But then like my mother-in-law, she's by far one of the most orderly. Like she likes order, she likes plans. She gets very thrown off if you. She likes to, like, when we lived with her for a little while, she wanted us to write our whole days out with a marker on a giant piece of paper. I guess that's a calendar. I don't have to be so dramatic about the way I describe a calendar. But they do make dramatic ones, like very large charts of things written in a large marker.
Yeah.
Anyway, Capricorn, earth sign, down to ground. She matches it perfectly. And my father-in-law is very like emotional, dreamy, and he is a Pisces, which is a water sign. Like Scorpio is also a water sign, which is Spencer. He's also very dreamy, writer, poet, whatever. I love it. I love that my sister is also a Gemini. I think that's really fun because she's like the only other one I know, and we think a lot alike. That constant questioning, that's part of it. Some people say like things people like to say are bad about Geminis, and people like to hate on Geminis and Scorpios. I'd say that they're the least liked. Me and Spencer's signs. For being flaky, like Geminis are supposedly, if you want to generalize and like say some of the negative stereotypes, that can come across as flaky. Like you never just say what you mean, but it's not that, because what I mean is that I literally, it's just possible that this is my belief, not that I'm sure it is my belief, except for the one about murder. Okay. And like I guess like also punching people in the face. Stuff like that, like just like unnecessary mayhem. Like I can feel confident about that belief.
Unnecessary mayhem.
Maybe, unless somebody came along and was like, well, what if you have to have unnecessary mayhem in order to save this baby right now? Then what can I hold the belief? You could hold the belief that it's the right thing to do, but not hold the belief that it's a good thing to do. Like it's a nice, and that is like a productive thing. I don't know.
Is there a utility in the whole, what do you call it? Sad asparagus stuff?
Sad asparagus?
Like Jiminy Cricket and sad asparagus, Virgin, all these things.
What is this?
Horoscopes?
Horoscopes?
What is it? Zodiac.
Okay, so there's the thing. Like, I am not so into horoscopes because I feel like that's going a little too far with it. Because, I don't know, maybe I just haven't read good horoscopes. I'm sure it could be fine. I'm more into the zodiac, which is just that you have an earth, moon. Well, you have a whole chart. It's cool. You can look at the whole thing for free online. But you have to know the time you were born. I had my time wrong. And this is part of what made me believe it all more. We talked about this last time I saw you. I was off by like 40 minutes or something, and it changed all three of them. Because before that, I was like, pfft, and I kind of let it go because I was like, these do not match. None of this is true. And I didn't even bother to like keep worrying about it, I guess. And then, well, because most of the time I was like supposedly on the cusp. If you just Google June, should I say? I'm not going to say whatever. On the cusp, meaning you can be between two signs. And I always was like okay with that because I always thought I was more Gemini than Cancer. That's the other side. Cancers are very like emotionally needy in a way. Like they feel a lot, and I am more of a thinker than a feeler. So I was always just like, that doesn't match. So when I got the real time, and then it said I was a Capricorn moon, which is a planner, organizer. Like that's my mother-in-law. She's Capricorn. I was like, that doesn't make sense, I think. And like a Virgo rising, which is you. And Virgo, see, you're the one that, like I said earlier, maybe you are more, maybe I just don't know enough about Virgos, but I think that they have very high standards. I think that's one of their traits. They are more, I think, of an ordered personality. That's all I can remember about Virgo. That's what it is. That's a problem. I don't know enough.
Yeah, I don't know.
How would you even describe if you were going to describe your personality as it would read in a zodiac sign? Introverted, extroverted.
Yeah, I would say like soon you will get a new job opportunity.
No, that's a horoscope. That is not as cool. We're not talking about horoscopes.
Okay.
Horoscopes are fun. Like, I mean, like, that's just not, I've never found that to be, I've never got excited about that the way that I did the zodiac. Because the way it just matched everyone so well. Like, it really, except you. We'll have to just we'll figure that one out later.
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It matches my brother-in-law really well. He's a Leo, Colton. Very showy. Like, he's always, like, giving a show.
He is, yeah.
And he loves that attention. Prideful, big ego. That's all the traits of a Leo. But Leos and Geminis get along famously because they're just both a little wild in that way. Like it's a little external, I guess. Like maybe that's one way the signs are divided a little bit. Like I'm pretty sure water signs in general, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, they're maybe tend to be on the more introverted side, I guess, if you were going to generalize them in that way.
So what does it all mean if this is all true or whatever? What does it mean?
That's why it's so fun, because it doesn't really mean it. It's just like it's just fun to talk about. Like I would never say, "Oh, that person is a Cancer. I can't be their friend." Ever.
Yeah.
I just think that's taking it too far. And so that's why it's a fun belief to have and to play with, because it's just like, it's just fun. I don't know. We don't need to worry about how it's going to trickle out into your behavior, like the way you were talking about earlier.
Well, I mean, I will say I've at least known like one or two people that I think were so into it that they kind of did use it as like a cloak for their behavior. Like, I am just this way. I'm just this. And it's like, well, come on. Like, don't be so disconnected to the responsibility you have for your own actions.
No.
That kind of thing.
Well, people do that with religion too.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Sorry, that's really crinkly. Okay, go.
It's totally fine. There was nowhere much to go. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm just surprised that this is what caught your mind recently.
Yeah, it was just fun. Why did it happen though? Why? Something set me off. It wasn't just like one day I woke up and I was like, let me look at this.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, you must have been exposed to this before.
It was my friend's birthday, I think, that everyone was talking about it. And they also like would post things on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen those memes where it's just memes of the zodiac. So
I see shit like that, yeah.
You don't.
I see people post things like that.
That's how I got exposed to it. I guess, you know what it was? I guess it's when I started learning about it and realizing that mine were so wrong, but seeing that it kind of did match most other people. And so I asked them to confirm my birth time, because I was guessing that it was 11:37 a.m. and it was 10:57 a.m. And once I got my birth sign and I got the right 3, then I was like, oh, wait a second. Let me keep looking. And I started looking at everybody's. That's how it started, I guess. So it started out slow. And then I looked up my sun, moon, and rising. And then I was like, all 3 of these seem not right. Like, got my birth time. Looked at it again, and they were all perfect. So then everybody else is so far, yeah.
Where did this stuff come from?
Like, so that's the constellations. So like your rising sign is whatever's on whatever part of the horizon. I can't remember the specifics when you're born. That's why you need to have the time and the location of your birth, like, because it has to do with where the stars and constellations and sun and moon and all this stuff is at when you're born. And you look at those constellations. So, like, for example, Castor and Pollux, I think that's how you say it, are the Gemini constellation. So they're the twins. That was, I guess, the constellation where the sun, I don't know, I'm not fully sure on how like the birth chart thing actually works, but it's the foundations are in the constellations. And so there's a story of these twins in Greek mythology, and that informs the traits of the Gemini. So because they're twins, and they're actually quadruplets because there's 2 female twins too, which is really cool. It's sad I don't know their names though, but they're harder to pronounce, so I can't remember them. But so one of the traits of a Gemini is supposed to be like thinks twice as fast and talks twice as fast. Partially based on the story of the twins and the image of twins. And so I only know that I guess I only really know the story of Castor and Pollux. I have a book that explains all the mythology of each one, each constellation that matches, the sign. So it's really cool because I don't know, like maybe when I try to really entertain the notion that it's based in something real, my mind goes to energy, I guess, and the type of energy that's in a certain place at a certain time. Can it influence your characteristics, like the traits, like your personality traits? Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, probably. Like energy. What do you mean by energy? Gosh.
That's the question. Yeah. On one hand, I think I notice, well, on one hand, I just don't believe in this stuff. But on the other hand, one thing that feels stupid as time goes by is like how many different versions there are of like language that represents observations that we don't seem to have better language for, and how it seems a little too frivolous to not try to at least engage in entertaining these possibilities. That's like my more optimistic side speaking and being like, it's not a good idea to just dismiss every belief that is presented to you all the time and never try to entertain the possibilities of what there are out there. But my skepticism seems to always win, and that part is always like, don't entertain anything.
So you don't entertain any beliefs?
No, I don't mean it quite as that harshly, but it's like the conclusion that my skepticism has come to is like, do not give your sense of identity over to anything. So like anything that sort of organizes you, don't fuck with it, because I don't think that being organized in such a way as that, things that like predate me, things that aren't me, I don't.
Wait, think that about the zodiac even?
Yeah, I would say so.
Because it's a system of organization.
Yeah, and it is different because of what you said. Like, it describes me in past tense. It doesn't describe what I'm supposed to do moving forward. So that makes it a little different.
It doesn't. Well, it kind of does. The zodiac.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't like. Yeah, I think that your personality traits will inspire your. Like, I ended up going to school for philosophy because I had that questioning nature, and I mean, I think in that way, your personality, if it does shape your personality will lead you towards certain paths in life.
Well, your nature would, if that's what it actually describes. What I mean is...
But you don't have to. You can't be like, oh, I can't do this because of a Gemini. Oh, man, I wish I could do this, but I can't.
More specifically, what I mean is like in 2024, I won't be tempted to go vote for the zodiac candidate for president. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you would never. Yeah, it's not. There's no need to.
There's no zodiac party in the United States.
Right. So no, it doesn't ever go that far because they all have really bad things about them, and they all have really good things about them. Mm-hmm. Like they're not, one's not better than the other. That's why it's also in a circle most of the time when you look at it.
I'm trying to think. I guess a different way to explain myself is like if it's like anything that can be. There's no better way to explain it as how it relates to identity, but more on a consumer level of identity. Like, people go to churches and they like pay tithes. They like pay for their Christian membership. People like...
Oh God, wait, why are we talking about that?
What I'm talking about is the same as like people give money to the political stances that they believe in. People give money. They invest in their own sense of identity. There's not... Well, so what I'm saying is I'm not going to go to a zodiac seminar and like pay some paid tickets to hear somebody tell me that I'm a Virgo and that this is... how that works.
Good. I'm glad you would never do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not supposed to ever get that serious. Most of the people that I know that are into it don't take it that far. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it tends to be the case with like most beliefs that I hold. Like I was saying earlier, is that I try not to let it take me away from my core beliefs. But I guess they're so vague that it seems kind of like, what are you talking about? I mean, yeah, not murdering people. I mean, reducing suffering.
I love not murdering people. I love how much it is tied into like everything.
I mean, that's, yeah, I don't know.
So that is the one belief that you feel most certain about.
I mean, yeah, I definitely feel certain. And the only way to question that is to be like, well, I mean, if I want to play my own devil's advocate, which I do all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, it would be to say that what about going to war and murdering? Does that count? Is bad as a thing we don't want to do? Yeah, it counts as a bad thing that we don't want to do. Could it possibly also be a necessary thing that happened and might happen again? Possible? Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. Should we think people are bad or wrong for wanting to be part of that group that is going to go to murder for us? That's where it breaks down. That's where that belief breaks down. Because, what am I going to do? Say no, let the X country come, whatever country might come. And they might not. I kind of think they won't. I think whatever war of the future might happen is not going to be like, hopefully it's not going to be a bloody situation. It's going to be more of a war that the people don't notice as much, which is already happening a little bit. A war of technology and science and healthcare.
Yeah. I think there's something profound in what you were kind of floating around there about the disconnection that there actually is from like what might be the most ideal thing you can imagine and what might be necessary. I feel like that is a big conflict that we experience a lot, because I feel like a lot of folks are stuck in their idealism and in saying like, there are certain things you can't do. We can't do these things. Yeah. And we fail sometimes to recognize that like there's certain things that are necessary to do. And
true.
We're not taking that into consideration.
Yeah. Like some hard ones, I think. One hard one is like gun ownership, I think. I mean, some people think if you don't own a gun, you're not a responsible citizen. And some people think if you do own a gun, you're like
totally
part
immoral.
of the reason why people are murdered innocently by guns.
Yeah.
Those are the two ends of the spectrum that we're working with. So where would I fall on that?
Yeah. Where would you?
Where would you?
Me?
Yeah.
Fuck it. I'm like very, on a basic level, very in favor of people embracing the right that they have to protect themselves with weaponry.
Okay, how about the distribution of weapons? Should there be any regulation like surrounding that?
Yes, I'm not somebody who thinks you should be able to buy tanks or automatics or whatever.
What about like just your regular average handgun? Should you have to pass any test in order to buy one?
Pistols, first I guess I'll just acknowledge with most firearms you already do, especially
what
pistols.
What if you have a background? Should you be allowed to buy one? What if you have
what background?
A violence of assault with a weapon?
Yeah, it does get froggy. And for me, I'm comfortable with that complexity and working through that. I'm not somebody who says, period, everyone should have a gun. That's not where I fall on the spectrum. I'm comfortable with thinking about things like that. I'm comfortable with kind of acknowledging that I can imagine there are some Americans that I would say, for these reasons, if we think about them, I could justify, you not having that right. But it is pretty hard for me to like jump. Like, I guess when we're talking about the spectrum, where I am is I'm more careful about removing people's rights than I am about removing threats. So I'm gonna be like doing the best I can to not remove somebody's rights unless I have a really strong case for it. But
that's the thing. Not everybody should have the right. I hold the belief that not everybody should Not everybody has the right. You have to earn the right to own a gun. Just because you're born a human doesn't mean you're qualified and capable of responsibly owning a gun. I'm thinking about kids who get guns, babies who get guns, criminals who break in, who then steal your gun. There's a lot. Guns are a serious thing to talk about. So I hold the belief that they should be controlled, but I don't necessarily trust the government to control them.
It's exactly what I was about to get into.
Yeah.
Because like the Second Amendment isn't about, because all of what you just described, they're really serious problems that we can hopefully, I believe, our best bet at controlling them is socially and through like lifestyle and through, being smart, rather than, because the point of the Second Amendment is that the government can't keep us from this right that we have, that they don't give us. They don't give us this right. It's just a right that we have. But that does still require, like, your average citizen has to teach their kids about guns if they're going to have them in their house and shit like that.
Right. And they have to store them properly. I mean, hidden, locked. And then you're like, well, what about when somebody breaks in the middle of the night? Do I want it hidden and locked up in a cabinet? It just gets so messy, and so it just carries so much weight. That's why I think we should go back to just like, I don't know, let's just all have dogs. Or like knives. Let's go back to knives and sword fighting. We can never go back.
I don't know.
Once the guns are out there, they're out there forever.
Yeah.
Unless, yeah. There has been, the government did come along and say, give us back your guns, people. Gun turn-in. They've done that.
Mm-hmm. Voluntary.
It is voluntary, yeah. But
Yeah.
they could do it involuntarily.
I mean, they could,
Just like they're making new cars. All cars made after 22 or 21, I don't know. Maybe not all cars, but I know like there's going to be a good amount of cars that are made with kill switches.
that somebody else controls?
Yeah. Clearly, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing.
That's interesting to think
That's
about.
a thing that's going to happen with cars. So don't sell your old car in case you need like a getaway car.
Yeah, that's what I'm just thinking. Yeah, I mean, it's tough.
So the intention is right. Like, what if somebody kidnapped your child and that kill switch is what allowed you to stop them and get your child back? Or the police uses the kill switch to stop a drunk driver that would have killed your child, or could be any number of like madmen on the loose. Just that it could be instantly stopped, right? But then there's a lot of harm it could cause, because obviously if that power is out there, we don't know how people are going to be capable of using it.
Yeah.
And they will abuse it. That's what we've learned. I think if we've learned anything, if we look at our past, is that human beings are greedy when they get power and money corrupts. I do believe that. I do like that lesson of the Bible. Jesus flipping the tables.
Yeah.
That's a good scene.
Rebellious Jesus. Yeah. I like angry Jesus and I like sad Jesus. In one of the Gospels.
You know more Jesus than I do, honestly.
I mean, it was my whole life.
Yeah, it was more of your life than it was mine. For sure.
In one of the Gospels, Jesus is depicted more like unable to kind of reckon with what's happening and sort of lamenting it and sort of like he's the victim of God in this way.
In which part of the Bible is that?
It's in one of the Gospels. I don't know which one, but I remember hearing there was this guy, man, I can't remember his name now, but he was a professor at UNC Chapel Hill for a long time, and I watched a speech from him, and he pointed this out, and it was just like, I just thought it was a beautiful idea, because we get this weird kind of like watered down like Sunday morning version of Jesus sometime. He's just the Savior. But when you look at these...
He's like, way more than that.
Yeah, it's a lot more complex. And when you get into the nitty-gritty and see these kind of different portraits of Jesus that different people tried to paint, it's kind of fun, to make it more complex.
Religion is fascinating. That was like the first thing I gravitated towards in college. My sister, too. She's not excited about it like I was. She's like over it already, but that's okay.
Like, so why did you gravitate to it so hardcore? When
That was like well, we talked about how I just question everything. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the question. If you had to say, like, what is the question? I mean, if you don't have that question, it's hard to... It can be hard to answer other questions. It doesn't have to be. But sometimes I guess I wonder about the belief about just the more, like, the big, huge general belief in a higher power and or a higher force, something bigger than yourself. If you don't have that at all, might it be a bad thing? It might. I'm not sure. Sometimes I worry it might be.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I don't have that belief, but I do sometimes wonder about that because
You don't have what belief?
I don't claim a belief in like a defined or like even a conceptualized higher power that I think exists.
You don't think any higher power exists?
I don't claim to believe it, that's for sure. And
You don't know. Do you believe in the possibility of it? That's part of being agnostic, is that you don't actually assent to any one specific belief system. It's just the belief that there is something.
Well, I don't call myself agnostic just because we're all agnostic in that way. And I'm subjected to agnosticism because like beyond what we perceive as our beliefs, none of us can say much about being certain about anything. So by default, I think that we're all quietly agnostic, and then we through our identities take on the role of affirmative beliefs.
You just don't want to label yourself with that.
I know that's how we all are. So yes, I am that.
Okay.
But I don't like that's where my identity comes in and where I disrupt it because I don't think of myself as that. So if somebody asks me, I'm not going to say that I'm agnostic.
Why? That's just a shortcut word to describe a really complicated belief.
Well, like, I mean, I'm just being kind of semantic about it, I think, because I don't identify with it.
But you just said that you can't help that it is part of your identity.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's part of it's our default nature.
Right. So you do identify with it in the like most important way you possibly could identify with the thing.
Well, no, I don't choose to identify with it. It is part of me.
But because you don't choose something doesn't mean that you can't have that belief. Like you think if...
Well, no, that's what I mean. I don't think of it as a belief. I think of it as like when it comes down to it, I'm admitting that like certainty is something that can't be had. And so for that reason, saying you're agnostic is like saying you're human.
We've had this argument before, and it's hard for me to navigate.
Well, maybe the term doesn't matter. So if it doesn't matter, and if I'm wrong, and if it's not a part of our nature, then I'll say, no, I'm not agnostic or whatever, because I don't fuck with that term. It just means nothing to me.
I think it's stubborn to say it means nothing to you.
It means no. It doesn't. I don't identify with it. I mean, what should it mean to me?
What does it mean to identify with something?
That's a great question.
What do you mean by that when you say that? That's, I think, where I lost you, maybe.
I just don't think it has anything to do with the way that... It doesn't inform the way I perceive things, as far as I can tell.
That's okay. This is the same argument we were having earlier about, like, if something is true about yourself, does it have to inform about your beliefs? Because agnosticism is a belief. Some people are not agnostic. Some people are very much one religion.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is beyond that religion, the truth of them as a blank slate, which they're not one. Like, I'm not saying that people are blank slates, but the truth of their person, if you took all of their culture and nurturing away from them, and if they were really honest, the same way that we're trying to be, they can't say that they're certain that there's no God, and they can't say they're certain that there is a God. Because the truth of people is that there is no certainty to be had, as far as I'm concerned. I think the certainty that people claim to have is disingenuous, and for that reason, I think we're
fair. So,
how do you mean?
What do you mean by disingenuous?
I think it's something that we tell ourselves that we're certain about, but we aren't. Like when it comes down to it.
Yeah,
same way that you said you're different.
Like literally, I don't understand the word disingenuous. I think I don't understand the definition.
Not sincere.
Not sincere. Mm-hmm. Not honest.
Yeah.
It's dishonest to like fully assent to one religion.
Yeah, it literally means not genuine.
And so dishonest.
You could say that. Like, because dishonest has a connotation that somebody could be lying. It's one thing to lie. It's
But
another
lie,
thing.
you think they're lying to themselves.
I think they are. I think their certainty has a utility to it, but I don't think that it's actual certainty because it can't possibly be.
Why? You don't think people can not hold any doubt that their ex-God is true, is the one and only God?
That's a good question.
They can, and those people get fanatical. And those people get violent sometimes too. Or they use it as an excuse to become violent. I don't know.
I think that is, I guess that's why that's to me an example on a behavioral level of what it takes to justify certainty like that. Like when people need, for some reason, to hold certainty so closely to their heart that it kind of radicalizes them. To me, that's a great example of why it isn't genuine, sincere certainty. It's violent in its nature if it's to that degree.
Yeah.
What's the violence for if you're so sure? If your belief is so secure, why the violence?
Yeah. Well, because I think it's in the name of like instilling your belief as the belief.
There's that. Yeah.
It's usually in the name of that. It's in the name of like protesting against something that they would think is the opposite of that belief. Violence isn't necessarily bad always.
Yeah, true.
It's not like I don't wish violence happens. I don't like violence to happen. I mean, violence is a really heavy word. Like, I think disagreement is good, and I think we need those feelings of discontent and negativity and pessimism, and
you need pushback.
Shun all of that. We shouldn't shun all those feelings.
Yeah,
because they're bad feelings.
Yes, and violence is also like there's threatening things in the world, and you can't just like violence is this way of sometimes it's a way of making borders between like what you're willing to accept and what you're not, you know. And
I can't think of a time that I would get violent for but if someone were to come around and like try to like take my child, for example, in the name of their belief, I would get violent.
What if they just try to take your kid for no reason?
Yeah, of course I would get. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be a very justifiable example for you to get violent.
What would Gandhi say? Would he really have to say like, don't? He wouldn't. He wouldn't. He doesn't say peace at all cost, right?
I have no idea.
I don't either. I heard that Gandhi had some not so good beliefs.
I've heard that. I've heard he did some weird stuff, but I mean, doesn't everybody?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know much about Gandhi.
I don't know much about him either. He went on a hunger strike.
Yeah.
To accomplish something.
I believe.
And I'm ashamed I don't know what it is right in this moment.
I believe his big thing was like liberating India, I think, from England. I think that was what he was motivated to do.
Yeah, that sounds right, yeah.
Yeah. And I think.
But was he a pacifist? I don't know that he was like this, because don't many people think of him as like a pacifist?
Mm-hmm. That is the general idea of Gandhi that we're often given. So I'm guessing there's some reason for that.
I wonder if part of being a pacifist means that you can never be violent at any cost. What about in the name of bringing peace? That's why he did a hunger strike, because it was the only nonviolent way for him in his eyes, or it was the most effective nonviolent way. It's
a shame that this is a blind spot for both of us, because I feel like there's probably a lot here that we could plug in. But regardless of that, let's go back to this one thing. I mean, I don't want to unpack agnosticism too much, but I don't remember why we were going toward this. But to answer your question, whether I'm agnostic or not, in technical terms, I'm not theistic.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that would make me an atheist. And that's something that I don't give a shit if I don't. I think I've lost a lot of interest in that word because I think I used to like take some pride in it.
Okay.
I don't think I do anymore.
That's cool. I think that's like a good thing.
Yeah, when I started to feel like I was in a community, then I started to be like, this isn't good because I'm just doing the same thing.
Well, community is good.
Community is good, yeah,
But-
but if you're kind of, I mean, it just felt tribal in the same way that I felt like religion and political ideologies were tribal. I don't want to be in a group that's like that. If I happen to like be in a proximity group where I live in this small community with people and some of them are musicians and shit like that, I'm cool with that type of community. I'm cool with having friends like you, but like bonding over an identity that's like in opposition to other identities, that's what I'm trying to stay away from. Mm-hmm. And
you don't. A lot of people hold identities that you're describing without, like, it's not necessary that they oppose others just because they hold theirs.
yeah.
I know for a fact, like, one of the documents that I really like from the history of the church, which there aren't a ton, I mean, that I can name that I say like are important, but this one is good, and it was written in like the 60s, I think, and it's a document. I'm sure I've told you about this, haven't I?
I'm not sure.
So it's a document that says basically makes a declaration that official word of the church or whatever, that all the religions of the world are on the same path to what they basically have the same goal in mind, which is like, don't murder people and live a good life and be as happy and flourish, human flourishing. Mm-hmm. And that human beings should never, I don't know if this specifically is in this document, this part, but humans can never judge who's going to heaven or hell. Like, that's only a true Catholic should tell you that you can't ever make that judgment. Only God can make that judgment. That's one of the beliefs I feel like gets lost sometimes in Christianity, is that God is not knowable. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like, there's one Bible verse I like. It's like, your ways are not my ways, or something like this. It's in Isaiah. So far are my ways above yours. Something about the star, the same distance of the stars from the earth, something like this. And if that's true, which I resonate with that, because I do feel that whatever is this higher power, it's higher for like, if it's higher than us, we're not going to fully understand it. If there is some sort of stronger, higher force, whatever you would call it, if we came from it, I guess, is it more fundamental than us, would be the question. Because if we did come from it, and this is what philosophers were trying to figure out for the beginning of like ancient Greek philosophy, at least, what is the universe made of? Is there something more fundamental than us? Like, some people, I think one of the first guys said that it was all made of water. Like, which is, and they went through one of the guys said fire. I think probably somebody said air. Mm-hmm. And that's like super fundamental. Is there something like it? And then you break down the belief further, not just what is all this made of, but what made it. And that's where it's like, do I think something made it? A thing? I guess something made it. If it made it, does it therefore have to be bigger than me, or stronger or more powerful than me in order to make me make all of this?
So a lot of what you've just kind of thought through is why I don't think of myself as a theist because I don't believe that like people can. I mean, that's just one of many reasons I don't consider myself a theist. But my issue with theism is like they all seem to be at least connected to some traditions of believing that this entity, this possibility that you're describing, has been revealed, and that like somebody knows who it is. So that's why I don't fuck with it. But then it might take us back to the original thing you brought up. Like, what do you think is the danger then of not having that sort of like that openness to whatever it is that the
danger of not having that openness is that I think if you are so certain about that, you must think you're doing things better than other people and like living life in a way that is more pleasing to God. That's a crazy, pretentious claim to make.
If
you're going to that your religion is living life in a way that is more pleasing to God than others. Because if you're going to say that, then you claim to understand God. This is where a lot of the claims about how to be a good Christian or what it is to be a good Christian can break down, is because you first have to suppose you know how God wants you to act, which I guess if you want to follow the Bible, you do. I mean, it does give you a lot of directions, like don't murder.
You like that one, I bet.
And I mean, the 10 Commandments, they're not bad. Like, don't be jealous, basically. Don't murder.
Don't boil goat's milk in a certain
That's
time period.
not one of the 10 Commandments.
That might not be right, but
that's some Old Testament.
Actually, the 10 Commandments are probably different than you think that they are. When, like, the second time he comes down with them and reads them out, they're totally different than the ones that we have in the courthouses.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
not totally.
Like
I think they're about 40%
like the stuff
different.
About goat's blood?
Yeah, I can't remember. Goat's milk.
Oh,
it's something strange. There's something about a goat, and then there's some pretty weird ones. I'll show them to you later. But anywho, the point being, yes, still what we refer to as the 10 Commandments. I understand what you're saying. But I guess what I meant to ask was, like, you had said you wonder if there's sort of a cost for people that don't have these beliefs. So you kind of laid out.
people that don't leave room for the possibility.
Yeah. Like, what do you think that cost is?
What is that cost? It's just like, I guess, it's too much of a risk that it's going to cause you to act in a way that is judgmental of others in a condescending way. Because if you truly hold these beliefs that your way is the way and the one and only way, and a Catholic or a Christian would say, no, I don't have to. I know plenty of them, and I don't claim that they definitely are judging other people. I know you can be a good Catholic and not judge other people. You can. Like, I know Catholics that are like, I think I know Catholics that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I guess that's not it. So what is it? Maybe you don't lose any. I mean, maybe we shouldn't worry about it.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe, like, it's the way that my nature is to question things. Some people's nature is to be more grounded in things.
Mm-hmm. But so do you think there's a cost to being an atheist?
I worry more about that. I guess it's hard to say why. I think it has more to do with the best way I could describe it is like this coldness. It just comes across as this very like cold, like unnecessarily cold way to be about the world.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where a lot of that anger comes through with atheists. Because I guess a lot of them feel that you're necessarily part of the problem if you're religious.
Yeah, they do.
Like the world, you're somehow less evolved than they are. And it's like, I don't know. Probably not. Sometimes, yes.
I think they think they're the most rational, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. And I was definitely that way. Like, I was obsessed with reason for a long time.
Yeah.
Obsessed with it. And I still am a little bit. It's starting to go away more so now, which is a good thing because it can get old, I guess.
Yeah.
And it can, like, it's just a little unbalanced, I think. But I guess that's a weird thing to say. I don't like saying that. That it's unbalanced to be that way. Like, to be that way.
Which way to be? Obsessed with reason?
Yeah. So I guess I got obsessed with Aristotle, who taught people that being obsessed with reason is like the way to live life. Because it is the proper function of a human. Like the same way the proper function, like a good broom is a broom that sweeps the floor well. Like a good human or a flourishing human or whatever is a human that is using their brain and their reason and their judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But you got really specific about it too, in that there's like two different types of knowledge you can have about the world, and one of those types you can only get through living life. So in that way, there's no reason you can't reason yourself into that. So I guess maybe that's where it can become unbalanced, is thinking you can reason your way through anything and everything. I've learned, especially with mental illness, that's not true. It doesn't. And a lot of our systems of therapy are built upon logic and using logic to, like, you just want to, like, analyze and logic the hell out of someone's mental illness. That's what a lot of therapy can do. And it can work, but I find that it doesn't always work for everyone, for sure, because life is like, you can't filter everything through reason in that way, I guess. The old me would say, yes, you can, and we need to do it. Let's do it right now.
I hear you. Yeah, I think I stay away too. Part of the reason I stay away from some of the stuff that we've like covered throughout the conversation is like, I do fuck with balance. I do think there's it, I guess, is represented more in like Eastern religions, the idea of kind of a harmony between two opposites as being kind of the best thing to aim for, rather than one thing.
Aristotle taught that too. And I'm sure he probably got it from them, because the Eastern, and that's the one thing that is a shame about my education in my liberal school, was that they started everything with Western, like ancient philosophy, where the first classes that everyone had to take was started with the ancient Greek philosophers. And they didn't even tell us there were all these other guys, but of course, I figured that out for myself. But I never did get to study it much, which I regret. That I would like to learn more, because I'm sure, I know they're super into balance. I do know a good bit about yin and yang, and the like hot and cold feelings, and the way that, especially, I know a lot about, well, not a lot, but a little bit about like Chinese medicine. It's very interesting, their way they look at medicine compared to us. And in the beginning of the pandemic, they actually did, I think they did try some herbal Chinese medicine stuff. I don't know much about the efficacy, but yeah, I think it's cool that they tried, because they're like, don't know what else to do.
So I guess one of the most like persuasive things I've heard in the last few years, it's like a tradition from one of these Chinese religions that I don't really know that much about, but it defined the world according to order and chaos. And it was like a balance between order and chaos. Wondering what you think about that.
What do you mean, like, define the world? Like, what about order and chaos? What's the question?
I'm wondering what you think of it as a lens through which to look at the world, I guess. Because the more that I have used it, the more sense it's made to me.
To look at the world to do what? What am I trying to do by looking at the world this way?
I think for me, actually, it does end up... it's not necessarily a belief system that affects like my future, but when I'm looking at things and trying to figure out what it is, trying to form opinions about like kind of what I observe in the world, I'm looking at it through sort of the theater of order and chaos, and which one is like trying to win and which one is losing and shit like that. And I think it simplifies things in a way that maybe I've been critical of throughout the conversation.
Give me an example.
Okay, let's just say what happens when there's a protest that fucks with the way things operate. Like let's just throw out the truckers. Let's just say the truckers in Canada.
The Freedom Convoy. Is that what it's called?
What they're doing is taking a situation where there's a bunch of order and they're throwing in chaos to the point where the order is disrupted to the point that it pisses people off. I think that's when I see things happen, that's the way I look at it, especially in our country too. Like I look at where's the order, where's the chaos, and what are each of them, which one is justified, which one is...
Oh, yeah. Now, if you're talking about which one is justified, yeah. Yeah.
Or how is there a balance?
Or is it
where's
better
there an imbalance?
Where is the balance? Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, that's hard. I don't know what to think about that. I mean, it's just true that is what we see and reflected in the world, or we see people trying to keep order and then people not trusting those people and bringing chaos. But is that, I mean, I don't think one's bad and one's good. I think they're both necessary.
That's right.
Yeah, so, and it could be, I guess, a kind of a more poetic way. I always feel that way about Eastern religion and even just their whole aesthetic to me is very poetic in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've just found it to be, it makes a lot of sense. And I don't think I think of it as like, it certainly don't feel to me like any of my experiences with religion or political like identities. It's more just like I'm looking at power struggles in the world. And I do believe that a harmony between these two things is like how you strike sort of a positive
the middle
place.
Ground. That's a teaching in a lot of like different belief systems.
Yeah.
So it's like that's something Aristotle taught for sure, was like a middle way. He was very clear that extremes are not good. Like I think that's a Buddhist teaching.
Yeah.
The middle way, but we learn by the extremes. So I guess I don't know, like it just seems exhausting that we've been learning for hundreds, thousands of years now. Mm-hmm. And it just feels like we haven't gotten far.
You don't think so?
I mean, in some ways, like obviously we don't have to worry about like survival as much as we used to. So that frees us up to do more thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
But
that's a big one.
But if the goal is human flourishing, and that's such a fundamental question that so many people disagree about what that means. So how you could possibly ever agree on the political system that shapes your world into a world that promotes that type of flourishing, it's impossible. It's like what? Everybody has different ideas about what it means to flourish. Mm-hmm. So I would say I'm simple in my idea about how to flourish. And I do think it's important that human beings are able to use their brains in this higher level way. But that can be done while, I don't know, doing yard work and stuff. I mean, you can still have to do chores and use your brain in a higher way. Or I always I felt the worst when I worked in a restaurant. Like that was the worst I ever felt as a human. Or like the most depressed because I felt like a robot. Like, and especially when I worked at a restaurant that told me I had to say the same thing every table.
Yeah.
And then they try to tell me they had secret shoppers. And they were like, you didn't say the thing that you were supposed to say. Because I couldn't do it. It's just like, I'm sorry, you're wrong. This is not the way to do this. It's not, I mean, they'll do that. That's like one thing I don't like about Chick-fil-A is like, they used to say, like, what would they say? Have a blessed, no, they don't say have a blessed day. It's my pleasure.
It's my pleasure, yeah.
You know that they have to say that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and like Moe's when you walk in and they yell at you. I hate that. I hate that so much. Like, I hate it enough that I will never go. And I'm serious. It's ridiculous. Like, oh, you think your little marketing team, you guys think you're so smart. You came up with this one thing that you can do every time. And it's always, I guess, like, in some ways, I guess some people like that maybe.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I'm with you. I feel totally manipulated.
I have no idea why we are talking about this.
I think it's great.
See, this is a never-ending conversation.
Yeah.
But anyway, and that goes back to what I was trying to say about what I believe is human flourishing, is that ability to fully exercise your brain, and not necessarily an academic way or like a scholarly way. It doesn't have to be like that. Just, you could apply it in a lot of different ways. Like a lot of different trades and crafts and arts. And, you know, it's just, you take a skill and become a master of it, or, I mean, you don't necessarily have to master something. There's a lot of ways to do it. It's very vague in that there's a lot of ways to use your brain in this state that is a state of flourishing, I would call it. One thing, at one point I read a book about this lady who was like, I think it was about Aristotle and eudaimonia, and which is his version of flourishing and happiness. And they compared it to being in a flow state, and this is a state that athletes can get into, musicians can get into, and it's when you're doing something that you've practiced a lot and you're doing it in a way that's like you're like, oh, I don't know how to articulate it, but
Not
you know what I mean.
Not self-conscious at all, and not like...
you're not even thinking about it, like, there's definitely not self-conscious, but it's also really, it's stimulating to you. And
you're like
that's why I
maximizing.
feel like jobs where people have to do the same action, I mean, it can be meditative, I guess, but... And you don't have to, I mean, I'm not saying if you do a job like that, you're doomed to not be like live a life of flourishing. You definitely can. You can. But I think though you can't help but get sad at how many hours you had to do that one task. That's not typically like playing basketball or doing a painting or even creating a dish, like making dinner, making food and planning what you're going to eat, and gardening. It doesn't have to be, it's nothing like crazy, you know, but in that way our system that we have in this country is clearly just doesn't seem to be promoting and allowing people to flourish in the way that they're best suited to, or that they're capable of. It doesn't allow humans to reach their full potential of happiness, I think.
Well, that's a tough one too, because I think this country actually, because of our economic mobility, that's kind of such an emphasis, people are encouraged toward that in some way or another. People, at least, I think, applaud people more if they can say, I started a business and like, I love it. I think people respect that.
Like, think about minimum wage, though. I mean, it's impossible to get out of that trap. If you're trapped in, like, for most people are like trapped in a minimum wage. Minimum wage hasn't gone up with, it has not gone up with inflation, and it's not a living wage.
No, I mean I'm with you. There are definitely problems with that idea,
How can
but
you flourish in
compared
that
to
world though, when you are like worrying about, am I gonna have enough money to pay
well, it's
rent?
not that I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying like you said in this country or in this system, and
In this system,
I'm
yeah.
comparing it to like China or El
I'm really
Salvador or
bad at
other
yeah.
places.
I'm really bad at understanding how their political systems impact their ability to flourish, because I can only see it from the outside in a way. I guess there are some like obvious extreme examples like North Korea or something. Clearly those people they can't be flourishing because they're being tricked, right? Like they're being like brainwashed, right? To
Well,
think that
yeah,
the supreme leader is their god. Like that, therefore they're like robbed of their humanity in that way.
yeah.
And then you have like a really easy extreme like obvious example with that, but
Well, there's also limits to what they can even choose to do,
right, yeah.
professionally or otherwise. So I think all I'm saying is I was just pointing out, I don't think America is unique in this. I think we actually are a better system for human flourishing or whatever, individual flourishing than some other countries are.
Yeah, compared to some others, yeah, for
But
sure.
I mean, also you're right. And I think what I'm hearing as you were talking through some of that is also culturally how far removed we are now from these traditions that like in the past have been used as examples of what gives meaning and what gives like sort of I'm not saying that they were this. I'm just saying that for a long time I think religion and different things like religion and labor have been thought of religion and labor in the form of before we like had industrialized so much. I think we're thought of as the lifestyle that kind of justified our life and gave it purpose in a lot of ways. And I think now is a time that we're so far removed from that and some of the philosophical anchors that used to used to be sort of lighthouses for us to sort of like access that flow state that you're kind of talking about.
So you're saying before the Industrial Revolution, we were better off?
Not better off all in all. I think like on a comfort level, we're way better off now. But I think like
Yeah.
that aspect of our lifestyle, what that we've
Do you
disconnected
think we're
from.
further disconnected from these anchors of, but I don't think that those things are like anchors that are needed in order for humans to flourish. But I mean, having them might be, I don't know. I guess it might be helpful.
I mean, I think
doesn't-
there's a question about like what it means that for so many centuries we participated in what it meant for us to survive. Like we participated in our own agriculture and our own like sort of making
Yeah.
sure that our society was safe.
We're disconnected from that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We're really far removed from that. And it's a shame because, like, we could be growing so much food in our own yards.
Yeah.
Kind of. I don't know if you ever tried to have a garden. It's not that easy. And I've actually talked about this. I've talked this out before, my idea for like everyone having a garden in their yard is, well, in my world, I guess, my utopia, that would be one job of the government. It would be to like come knock on your door, give you the supplies or tell you what supplies you need and tell you what your yard is suited to grow. Because if you try to plant some shit that doesn't grow and like needs full sun, you only have partial shade or what. I did that. I planted, like, I didn't know all the rules about it. And I could grow cherry tomatoes, tons of them. And that that spot, that dirt, whatever I had going on there was working, you know. So that would be a good function of the government, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like they should make our lives, they should just streamline things a little, I guess.
You think that would be the ideal role of the government?
Kind of like I don't know. There's a lot of roles of the government. I'm really conflicted about like being like holding very solid beliefs about what the government should and shouldn't be doing. Because in order to hold those beliefs, I have to hold other beliefs that I like not figure those out, I guess.
Doesn't the term utopia stem from something like no place?
That sounds right. I feel like I even looked it up recently. I don't know why it came up in conversation.
Yeah. I get really skeptical about people who think, not you, not like the thought experiment,
Yeah, I
but
know what you mean.
there are people who really believe like in a communist utopia or something. And I'm like, man, fuck off with all that shit.
I mean, that's like kind of like what's it called when two things contradict each other in the same? What is that called?
Paradox?
Yeah, that's like a paradox,
Yeah.
I think, or like a because in order to have communist society, you have to take away freedom. You have to limit freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow this got tied up. Lately, I'm seeing the notion of freedom getting tied up with the notion of race, which I think is really strange.
Interesting.
I saw that recently where the truckers convoy of
Oh my God.
this convoy of freedom. I saw one thing that kind of supported this idea that they were entitled or privileged in some way, that because they're white and that's why they value freedom. I think that's a very dangerous spin to put on things because,
Yes,
first
it
of all,
is.
and it's also very insulting to other races to think that they don't value freedom in this way.
Yeah.
There were people of all races as part of that, because people of all races value freedom.
This subject drives me wild, especially after this last week with some, Trudeau's just fucking hate him. I really fucking hate him. And so I don't want to go down this too much, but yes, I totally agree. I mean, I think that simplification that I've been criticizing throughout, part of the problem is that it seems to come with these simplified packages of stuff. The same way that people are like, well, I personally associate striving to not be racist with liberalism, so I must be a liberal. But therefore, what is that in your mind psychologically? What does that tell you conservatives are? People who are willingly either passive or intentional about being racist.
Yeah.
That's not what they're motivated by, and it's really frustrating to me to watch that shit play out in people's language and decision making.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that struck a chord. I'm so fucking mad at that right now.
Well, yeah, so when I saw that, I felt also lately, not just that, but plenty of things that I've seen lately in the media are infuriating because I just feel that they try to take advantage of fear, in humans, and I really hate the idea that if you, I don't want to talk about vaccination stuff. Let me think of how to put it in a more fundamental way. It's like the idea that I don't like the idea that if you choose not to get vaccinated, therefore you don't care about other people dying.
That's the same thing, yeah. That weird, deriving a malice from somebody's decision.
Like you're entitled or privileged to even have the audacity to hold that belief that it's not the right thing for you to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
That's sick. That is sick that is a thing that people believe, and that I'm pretty sure even our government, that's their message. Be a good person. You should care about others. I'm doing it for other people.
Yeah.
You can't tie up those two notions together. It's really manipulative, and it's a bad sign. That is not something the government should be doing. The government should give us the facts and not the opinions.
Yeah.
The opinions are up to each person to talk to with their doctor.
True.
Yeah. And I guess I'll just go ahead and say this disclaimer now, since we talked a little bit. I am not giving any medical advice right now about vaccinating and COVID, and none of this counts as medical advice. none of this represents the opinion of anyone I may be affiliated with, any organization.
Yeah.
And it's simply a conversation about the world we're living in.
Yeah.
And on the observations that I'm making.
And particularly about people kind of taking something like that and creating this false ultimatum. Do you want to be a bad person, or do you want to subscribe to this idea?
Yes.
And that's what is happening, I think, all the time. And I remember watching it happen. I remember not being surprised when I used to see this device used by conservatives, but it's become more and more clear that it's used by fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Like to justify all sorts of shit. And we just can't afford to be this stupid, if I'm being honest. We can't afford to be this mischievous in the way that we try to talk to people and accuse them of being immoral all the time.
I don't think it's a matter of being stupid. I think it's a matter of being scared. I think people are truly scared about what to do. What is the right thing to do? What is the right way to behave? Who should I believe? Who can I not believe? It all comes from a place of fear.
Is fear more stupid than bravery?
Stupid. Okay, we need to change the word stupid.
I like it.
Is it? Yeah, you got to give me a different word. I can't even.
Malicious. I think manipulative is
like, yeah. You mean
word.
like trying to trick people into doing things is like in the name of being brave.
I think it's this. That what I'm criticizing is people miscategorizing their perceived enemy in a way that strawmans them and makes them sound different than what they are. It's dishonest descriptions of who it is that you're in opposition of or to or whatever. Opposition with.
Versus what?
Versus like being truthful.
What is the question? I forgot the question.
We were talking about I'm talking about the mechanism that people use on a linguistic level to simply say things like they give you an ultimatum that if you don't believe this thing, then you are this immoral person.
Yeah.
And I think I was calling that stupid to do, saying that we can't do that.
Manipulative.
But now I'm saying manipulative and kind of like bad intentions behind it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So what's the dichotomy is usually if you do this, you're a good person. If you do this, you're a bad. Just good and bad mostly.
Yeah, I guess so.
People get more worried about that than anything else, being labeled as good and bad.
Yeah.
So that is like the ultimate way to manipulate people.
My personal take is just that there is a better place for us to be, and it's one where instead of trying to participate in this like war and manipulate one another into like being defeated, I think we have to start relying on each other's strengths more. That's my whole thing with ideology that I've like spilled. We've talked about it extensively, you and I, and I think that's the purpose for me is like encouraging people to, instead of engaging in that manipulation of one side and another, like trying to encourage people to instead see the benefits of two opposing ideas and try to build a best idea out, a bridge that connects them.
Yeah.
Again, that goes back to the balance thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. How do you live in that middle way when you can't even elect a political official that has those beliefs? Because I don't think conservatism is the equivalent of the middle way.
I don't either. Yeah.
So that's not a good even way to live. Like even like people who say they're in the center, I don't think that really matches a middle way either. I agree. Honestly, the middle way is more of like, it's more extreme than conservatism or being in the center because it's going to take extremes from both ends possibly. I mean, we could get more specific if you want, but.
Well, I think we're almost there, but I totally agree though. Like I've never really believed that centrism was a real thing. I think it's more just like, what I strive for is a feeling of being constantly awake enough to like interact with information.
What? Say that again?
what I strive for is not like to call myself a centrist. Like I'm always in between, but to be to feel awake enough that I'm engaging with information like actively as an active awake participant.
Yeah, you can't like look at any piece of information objectively if you already are labeling yourself.
Right.
I do agree with that. But we differ in our beliefs about, I think, ideology more generally. But I think in the political way, it's not helpful to label or subscribe to these labels of ideology in our country.
Yeah.
Leftist, anarchist, Antifa. What's the other ones? What's like the alt-right?
Jesus.
All
yeah.
these words.
Well, so I guess we ought to wrap it up. So I guess the theme for today is that you're not in favor of murder. That's the big takeaway.
Yeah, and like I want people to flourish. It's exhausting trying to figure that out, but that's just, I don't know. That's what I'm obsessed with doing lately, I guess, is like trying to get more clarity on the way to live while also just trying to live. So
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that, but I've been doing pretty okay with it, I think. I don't think I've like hurt people. I mean, we all have hurt people in one way or another. But it's frustrating to feel that I'm capable. Lately, I feel that I am capable of more than I am doing. Mm-hmm. Like I'm trying to learn do this logic-based therapy certification, and I can't not get it done. And I want to like learn more psychiatry. And I want to learn more, I guess, I've always wanted to get a clearer picture of history, like just general like history of the world.
Yeah.
And then I want to do things like playing guitar and painting and cooking and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky that I have more time than average to do those things because I work half time, like 20 hours, but the other half I'm being a mom to a toddler, which is a lot of work too. Mm-hmm. It's everybody's trying to just find a balance. But I worry that like people are also just so exhausted by their situation and their circumstances, especially financially, that they don't even get the chance to explore their humanity. Yeah. So that's one thing I like about Catholicism is they tend to have a sort of socialist slant on their political beliefs. And like redistributing wealth is important to them. And they were really big on charity. Like they're one of the biggest charitable organizations. They might be the biggest charitable organization in the United States. I'm not sure. They're close. They donate a lot of money. And I do think that's probably one of the things that needs to happen. Like there is these super concentrated pockets of wealth that is just getting exponentially more wealthy. And it's like, why do we need to have it so concentrated and like have people suffering so badly? It's billions and billions of dollars that are being amassed by corporations and single individuals. What are you going to do with all that money? Like what is Jeff Bezos doing? He's building a stupid fucking boat that they got to tear down a bridge. That I don't know why that really got to me. He like built this boat somewhere that.
Yeah, why didn't they just build it on the other side of the bridge?
Yeah, like they're like, fuck this bridge. I don't care. I'm gonna build it here. And where the fuck are you even building this boat? Like it's like in Holland or Germany or something, right? The bridge is somewhere in Europe. It's just gross. It's gross that the wealth is so concentrated.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like Thomas Sowell has said, like the default is poverty. That's the default. And so the fact that we've decreased poverty, abject poverty throughout the world to the scale that we have is like a plus, and it's a good thing about today.
Yeah.
The fact that we have rich people doesn't really bother me.
But it's not just rich; it's super rich.
If I got super rich, I'd be fucking stoked about it.
Of course you would.
It's a little hard for me to. It's not that I don't resent it, because I do.
It's not about resenting it. It's about getting pissed at the fact that first of all, it's the way this wealth is accumulated most of the time. These are not like random ideas, like this guy who like invents the toaster or something. Like, this is a lot of dirty money.
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of corruption in this money.
Yeah, but I mean,
that is
gross. If there wasn't, would you feel differently?
I would still feel it's unnecessary. I wouldn't be so grossed out by it. But I also think if it was collected in a more altruistic way, or I don't know if that's the right word, a less corrupt way, they wouldn't concentrate it. They would redistribute it. And not that you have to. I'm not saying we need to like make laws about it. I don't want to take it that far, maybe. I'm not sure. I'll have to think more about that. But it's definitely needs to happen more in this country. There needs to be, that's one thing I feel somewhat certain about, is that this unrestricted, I guess it's part of capitalism, right? The government stays out of the economy in that way. They don't set these rules and regulations for corporations and their behavior, right? So that's how Pfizer, for example, can get away with still making billions and billions of dollars after they've been sued for false marketing. Because they already have so much power.
I mean, it isn't like the government isn't involved in the economy at all. Like, it does.
No, I'm not saying no involvement.
Yeah.
It's about the regulation of goods and the production of those goods. That's one trait of capitalism, right? Is that you do what you want. Like, if you want to go use child slaves, like Nestle did. Nestle got sued by the children. I think it was like the whole Mars chocolate company who got sued.
Yeah, coincidentally, right when they were going through this apparent
M&M's rebranding
thing, yeah.
So it's just stuff like that that's like so gross, I think.
No, I mean, I am with you. Like, it's not like I don't see the grossness. I just am a little, like I said earlier, when it comes to like, when we get into the realm of like, it's one thing to be grossed out. It's another thing when we do start talking about, okay, what has to be restricted on a government level.
That's really
that's where I'm starting to be like, well, hold on now.
Yeah,
You're
I'm not saying I know the way. All I'm saying is clearly what we have in the United States is an example of something that's gone way awry. Like, this shit is amok. It's a run amok. And it's doing damage and causing harm to people.
Yeah.
So I feel confident that, like, this is not the way to do it, the way we're doing it. Like, that doesn't mean it's not better than, maybe it is better than other ways, but there's definitely a better way than this too.
I do think we're missing a lot.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'll say is maybe next time we get to sit down, we'll figure out what all that is, and we'll solve.
Listen, this conversation is forever to be continued.
Yes. And we will do more of them.
Okay.
I guess we'll call it a day for now, and I have enjoyed it, and I hope next time we'll also argue more, because I always enjoy arguing with you. Yeah, you're a fun person to argue with. So
okay, good.
Thanks for doing this. I know it's like not your usual thing, but thank you for coming and doing it.
Thanks for having me. It's really cool to be asked to do this, to like share your thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, I mean, I have really enjoyed over the years watching you navigate all these things that you have on a belief level. So I just wanted to fucking, I don't know, unpack that some more.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, well, I guess that's it.
Okay, bye.
Bye.